This is Bill Barnett, and Bill has been at the College of Business for many years, and was before that a student at Loyola as an undergraduate and and a law student. So we're here today to talk about how things have changed at Loyola and the tradition that he found then and how he finds it now. So welcome, Bill.
Thank you, John.
So now you started at the university in the 60s, I believe, right?
Fall of 58.
58.
The fall of 58. So this is,
50
years
My goodness.
ago. Yeah,
Well, that's most of your life you've spent on the campus of Loyola.
absolutely. Longer than I've been married, and that'll be 39 years come the end of this year.
Well,
So,
that's quite a relationship.
yeah.
Congratulations for
Thank you.
sustaining it. Could you talk to us about when you came to the university? How was it then in '58? Most of the buildings must not have been here.
Oh, no, most of the buildings on the campus are new now. If I look around and think, of course, the church, Holy Name was there, Thomas Hall was there, Marquette Hall and Bobet Hall, Stallings Hall, and the old library building. And
That's it.
that's it that was here then. That everything else is new.
So most of it is new then in
Oh,
that
absolutely,
context.
Absolutely, yeah.
How many students were on campus in those days?
A lot fewer than there are now. I couldn't tell you how many because I was a student then, wasn't paying any attention to that. The population wasn't as mixed as it is today in terms of co-eds. There were, it was mostly male. They had female students, but it was mostly male, and of course no black students. At that time, that came along a few years later. It was very, very different. In many ways, it was much more in locus parentis, right? So that the male students had to wear long pants, slacks to class, no blue jeans or shorts or any of that, and no tennis shoes. You had to have leather shoes and a shirt with a collar. And the young ladies had to wear either dresses or skirts. They were allowed to wear slacks or shorts for just like the guys could for sporting events or things like that later in the day, and after extracurricular. But they did that, and
Was that an official dress code?
absolutely. There's no question about that. Wasn't voluntary. I mean, the freshmen came and they had to wear the beanies, and,
Really?
oh yeah, all that kind of stuff. And it was, as I say, much more in locus parentis. Many more Jesuits here teaching
Really?
then. Yeah, obviously, like so much else that went on in the church, the vocations went down post Vatican II. I can say with all honesty, I came here in the fall of '58, and as Father Doyle said, when they finally kicked me out at the end of the spring of 1961 for academic reasons, not for disciplinary reasons, Mr. Barnett, I can't figure out why it's taken us 3 years to get rid of you. So then when I came back, I spent a couple of years in the Navy and spent a couple of years working for an oil company. When I came back in '65, things had changed quite a bit. There were, they still had quite a few Jesuits, but not quite as many, and at least it didn't seem that way to me. And they had more lay teachers, and the in locus parentis had started to change a little bit, and now it's virtually non-existent now.
Well, I would imagine that in '65, the difference between '58 and '65 must have been fairly dramatic.
It certainly was. It certainly was. And as I say, they had by that time they had at least one black student that I remember because we talked and things like that. But yeah, things were very, very different, and very different for me too. When I started it, I was in physics, and
Really?
when I came back, I went to the business school. Yeah, I mean, well, I think I would have tried physics again, except they had a requirement, a language requirement, German, and I had flunked first semester German 3 times, and but I mean, really, I knew I had no facility with languages, and I could have studied German for the rest of my life, and I'd be lucky if I learned how to say good morning. So I just said, well, since that's a requirement for physics, no sense in even trying that. And that's not to say that I would have been very successful as a physics major anyway. But I found myself in business school, and it was thanks to Father Tana and Father Keller that, my record was so bad, my academic record, that when I came back, the dean, I got a letter from the dean saying, well, we're letting you in, you're on probation. And he says, you got one semester to get off of probation, and you can only take 15 credit hours because you're on probation. Well, I could do the math. So I made an appointment going to see him. I said, well, Dean, I don't know what to say. You've let me in with 15 hours, and if I get straight A's, I won't be able to get off of probation with straight A's in 15 hours. And he looked and he says, oh, well, well, what do you propose? And I said, well, let me take 18 and I'll get off because I can do it with 18. And he said, well, you named your poison, you go ahead and take it. So, I did, and, everything was fine because this time I decided to study and not drink as much and stuff like that. And, that's what happened.
Did you make friends then that you still have now?
Yeah, yes, the answer is yes to that. For example, a guy I'd gone to high school with came to Loyola, and he and I are still friends, and another guy that I met here, he and I are still friends, and there are others who I still know. I don't really, since, it's a shame, but, I wasted a lot of my youth. I just didn't use the talent God gave me, and maybe it's a Catholic guilt or whatever, but ever since then I've just, said, you got to put your nose to the grindstone, you got to use it. And so I'm really not much of a social animal. I don't socialize much. My life is my family and my work, which is Loyola and my students in economics. That's it. I don't go to parties unless I'm dragooned and things like that. I just don't socialize.
Were there teachers or maybe some Jesuits that affected your life that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, who should we remember, Bill? Who should we know about?
Oh, gee, there are so many. It's really hard to single them all out. I remember very, very well the influence that Father Carl Merring in the physics department and Father Ben, as we called him, Father Benedetto in the physics department had on me. But there were others. There was Father Guy Lemieux in the philosophy department, who was a tremendous influence on me. And of course, Father Doyle had a big influence on me.
In what way?
And don't let me not forget to mention Father Tanner again and Father Keller. And then one other guy who was a Jesuit, and he quit the Jesuits, and last I heard he was up at Christendom College in Front Royal, Virginia, Father Vincent Michelli. I think that they did some things that made me realize that, I had certain talents and abilities, and that I had a moral responsibility to use those talents and abilities. And at the same time, they encouraged me to use them, and they supported me when they saw me trying to do the right thing, and they came down on me when I wasn't doing the right thing. And they really helped me. And then, of course, another one that I want to mention, and I'm thinking so much, and I was thinking about the ones who were here back then. But of course, Father Carter, Father Carter has had a tremendous effect on me.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And his vision of the university, or his personal attention to you, or how so?
Yeah, you hate to use the word in a sense because, but I would say kind of mentoring, but they did, what people today would call tough love when it was needed, And, Father Carter, when I came back to join the faculty, he was the one who hired me. He hadn't run the university at the time. And, but he was also the one who had flunked me out of the university. You know, I had taken 2 physics courses from him that 1960-61 academic year, and he flunked me in both of them, and deservedly so. And you know, and he knows. I mean, he knows he did the right thing. I know did the right thing, and I told him that, and I thanked him for it, because he could have maybe let me slide by, you know. But if he had let me slide by, I've just wasted more and more of my life.
Huh.
And so they made sure I didn't do that, you know, and that was something that I am very, very grateful to them for.
And you try to do that with your students?
Yeah, I mean, when I see a student who has who isn't using the talent that they have, in my opinion, you know, and I'm not talking about, you know, look, you got to put your nose to the grindstone and study 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But you got to make a real, sincere effort to use the talent that God gave you, and I always tell them, you know, I say, look, you don't have to answer to me. I said, and you don't have to answer to your parents or anybody. 2 people you got to answer to: yourself. I said, but don't forget, you're going to have to answer to God for what He gave you, and what did you do with it, you know? And I tell them, you wouldn't be here if you didn't have more than average talent. So what are you going to do? Tell them, well, you know, that's okay, thanks, but I squandered it. I didn't do anything with it. I said, you don't want to be in that position. And then I explained to them that I was there, and I learned the hard way, but, you know, thank God I was given the grace to, you know, to straighten up, you know. So, you know, probably of all of the Jesuits, it was Father Keller, because I talked to Father Tana, and he said, well, you know, you go talk to Father Keller. And I talked to Father Keller, and it was Father Keller who said, okay, look, you know, I'm going to go out on a limb for you and get you readmitted to the university, you know, but you know, you better not, you know, chop off the limb behind me. I don't forget his exact words. That's what he said.
How was the university, what was the character of the university in those days? Was it known for, in the 50s and the 60s, was it known for some particular academic pursuit, or?
I always looked at it, well, you know, and this is obviously in retrospect, and I can't tell you what the general public thought or anything like that. But after I left here with my degree finally, when I started to work for the New Orleans Steamship Association, which is a trade association for the shipping industry in New Orleans at the time, and I bumped into, I was, you know, doing a job, but, you know, it wasn't as fulfilling. It was an interesting job, and I enjoyed the work and all, but it didn't completely fulfill me. And I bumped into a guy who I'd been an undergraduate with here, and he was working down in town, and Jean Cohen was his name. And Jean said to me, so you know, we talked, and he said, well, look, UNO has a part-time night MA in economics. I think you might enjoy it. So I graduated at the end of, or in August. I took my last class that summer of '67, and I went to work, and in January of '68, I was out taking courses at night at UNO, just because I was interested. And they had graduate students, the MBA students and MA and econ students in the business school, and they had gone to various universities and all, and man, I looked around and said, man, I can compete easily with any of these people. I mean, I'd gotten a really, really solid education here. And then when I went up to Michigan State to get my PhD, hey, I'd match my education against any of the ones of the graduate students up there, the PhD students. I mean, I had gotten a really, really, really thorough, sound education here in theology, in philosophy, in English, in lit, in math, in history, you name it, and of course in economics and accounting, you know. I mean, it was really, and I had no, I mean, you know, I mean, they had guys when I was, you know, in graduate school who had gone to university all over and come, you know, and I mean, I didn't, hell, man, I outcompeted them, most of them.
Most of your teachers were Jesuits?
Here?
Yeah.
Boy, that's, most of them. so hard, you know, man, you get to be my age, you can't remember my last name, John. A lot of them were, whether it was half or more, I'd have to go back and check. In physics, all of them were except, well, there was one guy who was, no, because Henry Guerin was there, but he didn't teach me. There was another guy in physics who was a layman who taught one course that I took, or taught a lab or something. But all the rest of them were Jesuits. In math, I had some laymen, Mr. Todd, Terry Todd, his son's a Jesuit brother, who was in Guam for years. I mean, comes back, I see him every now and then on campus, a real nice guy. So his father, but then I took a couple of math courses, you know, and then no. So most of the math I had was not Jesuit, except I did take a couple of modern algebra courses with Father Keller. So that, and then in English I had some Jesuit, some not. In history, I didn't have Jesuit. Theology, all except one was a Jesuit. Philosophy, all except one was a Jesuit. And you have to remember, one of the things that it was when I was an undergraduate here, when I started the first time, you had to take a theology course, a 2-hour theology course every semester you enrolled, period. I mean, no questions asked, you had to do it. And you had to take 5 3-hour philosophy courses. Wow. And it wasn't just a bunch of electives or anything. I mean, you know, if I had to this, there was one elective, and other than that, there were 4 required courses. You had to take logic and metaphysics and the philosophy of human nature and ethics, plus an elective. And I mean, really, I mean, you know, I can still remember. Oh, God, philosophy. I don't, at one point, I didn't want to study anything. I wanted to go, you know, the first time, just let me get out of here and go get a beer or something. You know. Second time, you know, look, I want to study economics and accounting and all that. But, you know, when I look back on it, and it didn't take me long to start looking back on it when I was saying, thank God, you know, thank God, you know, that they made us take all that. And the same thing, we took, 12 hours of English. I mean, your first semester, you came in and you took a course in composition. Well, it wasn't, you know, where they expected to teach you grammar and spelling or anything. I mean, you would expect to be able to do this. What they were trying to do is really teach you much more beyond that, you know, how to really write as opposed to just put words on paper. And then we took a semester of American Lit and 2 semesters of English Lit.
Do you think all those philosophy courses and the theology courses, is that what kind of gave the university its definition, its Jesuit education? Is that characteristic?
I wouldn't want to lay it on any one course or group of courses. It was the whole milieu. And the whole milieu was, you're going to get a broad, and I mean a broad education across the whole, everything, you know, and it's going to be broad and it's going to be rigorous.
Sounds like deep too.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. It was rigorous, broad and deep. I mean, rigorous wasn't playtime, man. You know, I mean, you took a course. At least my experience was, you wanted to get a decent grade, pass. You took a course. You took the books and you went home and you studied. You know, I mean, that's what you did. And if you had a paper to write, you better put some serious time in it and write a good paper. Boop, you know, I'd go back and rewrite that, son. You know,
they were pretty strict about it.
I found them pretty strict. I don't know. I guess there are people with more brains than I have, or whatever, who may not have found it that strict, but I did. Yeah. You know, but it was a wonderful experience. It was a wonderful experience. And the student body, I mean, you know, I was in a fraternity, and other fraternities, we had rivalries and all that. But, you know, I see people now who were in other fraternities and all that, you know, all that stuff's going on. They're just nice people. I mean, it was, you know, and when I say rivalries, I mean, it wasn't mean, vicious stuff or anything like that. And, you know, basically, the young people that were here, the overwhelming majority of them were just nice young people. And truthfully, that hasn't changed one bit. The curriculum has changed, the faculty has changed, you know, all kinds of things have changed. But that hasn't. I left out Father Yenny. How could I leave out Father Yenny?
Who was he?
Father Yenny was an economics professor who taught me economics. He, Doc Connor, a guy named F.F. Smith, and Doc Copa, those were the four. They, between them, really turned me on to economics. And Father Yenny and I used to go round and round and round. He's the nicest guy in the world. And tallish and really, I mean, he looked emaciated to me. I mean, really, he looked like, you know, he just had the skin covering his bones. I mean, that's, and later on, he had a gray pallor to his skin, you know. And I can still remember when we were over in Stallings Hall, they had platforms up in the front of the classroom, and the platform had a little section that would stick out closer to the desk, and that to the student's desk, and that's where the desk was up there, and the blackboard was up there, and so the professors would teach standing up there. You see, and when I first came to teach, even it was still that way. And we got rid of that later. And I can still remember the first time, because this is when I'd come back and I was serious, and I always used to sit in front of the class then, because I didn't want to be, you know, any distractions at all, so I'm just right there. And Father Yenny standing up there, and he had this habit, I don't know what, he'd be talking, and all of a sudden, he'd stop in the middle of a sentence, and his eyes would roll up in the top of his head.
Oh, come on.
So help me. And you saw nothing but white. And here I am, you know, I'm sitting in his class. I'm probably 25 years old at the time, maybe, yeah, 25, I guess, maybe 26. I'm sitting in his class. And I mean, he's 5 feet from me, but, you know, I'm sitting here and he's on that platform. And I'm looking, I said, oh my God, he died, and he's going to fall right on me. And then after what seemed like forever, and was probably just a couple of seconds, his eyes come back down, and he picked up right where he'd left off.
Was it narcolepsy or something?
I have no idea what it was, but I tell you, the first time it happened, it was a shock. But at any rate, he and I would, I mean, he was great. I loved him. He was a great, you know, man. He taught me a lot of economics, but he and I disagreed over one fundamental issue. And, I mean, we would disagree about economics, but that wasn't really important. What was really important was he and I would argue about this all the time. He'd say, well, suppose, Mr. Barnett, you were on a desert island with me, and I was the only one there. And they had fruit in the trees or whatever, but I wasn't physically able to get them. Would you have an obligation, a moral obligation, to feed me? And I looked at him and he said, yes. And he says, that's right, a moral obligation in justice. And I looked at him and I said, no, Father, a moral obligation in charity. And we went back and forth over, we both agreed. I mean, we didn't disagree. I had a moral obligation to help him under those circumstances. The question was it justice or was it charity?
That's an interesting.
We argued about that. You know, we even, when I came back on the faculty years later, I reminded him of that, and we discussed it, and I said, nope, I still say charity. And he said, I don't remember the exact words we used, but I said, I still say charity, and he still said justice. Okay?
So you never did resolve it, huh?
Well, yeah, I resolved it in my favor, and he resolved it in his favor. And we agreed to disagree and still be friends.
Well, that's good.
And, you know, but I mean, but that's kind of thing it was. It was you know, as an undergraduate, it was very rigorous education. It was a lot of intellectual stimulation, and I just enjoyed it immensely. You know, when I came back, you know, when I was serious about getting an education, I really just enjoyed it immensely. I loved my time as a student. That's why I was only out of school a couple of months, and then I was back in school, you know, and then I went and got my PhD and all. I mean, I can't imagine a better life than being a professor. I mean, you know, obviously you've got to get into something, a field you love. Hey, I love economics, so what? So I'm being paid to do what I love. Okay. Now, if Father Wiles is going to watch this, I'm not being paid enough, but anyway, you know, you know, I'm being paid to do something I love, which is to study something I love, and then try and transmit that the love of it and my understanding of it to my students, and encourage them to go beyond me. You know, what could be better? And, you know, I mean, I've 3 children, and as I've said many times, everybody who knows me says it, you know, if you can only teach one subject in a university, in my opinion, it should be history, okay? But second would be economics. Now the philosophers and the literature professors and the theologians, they're going to do great. But, you know, but that's my feeling, you know? And I've been very blessed. I have 3 children, and my oldest son got a BA in economics with a minor in history. And then my next child, my second son, got a BBA with a double major in economics and finance with a minor in history. And my daughter got a BA in history. She majored in history. So, you know, I've been very blessed. My kids were able to come here and get great educations, and, you know, I couldn't have had a better life, John. I mean, you know, and I, you know, frankly, money doesn't mean a lot to me. As long as I've got enough take care of my family, basic necessities, you know, I don't need a lot of things. So, and you don't get rich in this profession. You know, I mean, if I had some chances to go to, you know, much bigger universities, and I had chances to go on Wall Street, and I never wanted to do that, and I could have made a lot more money, but it just doesn't interest me. You know, I'd rather be happy.
So when you got your PhD at Michigan,
Michigan State.
Yeah.
You
came back here in what year?
Well, I finished up in Michigan State in the fall of '73. Okay, and my father-in-law was in the commodity markets at the time. He ran an investment advisory service for people who were interested in you know, the commodity markets. He put out an investment advisory letter, and then he also was a commodities broker. And he, you know, whenever we found out I was in economics, you got to come work, you got to come in, on and on. Well, you know, if you finish up in the middle of the year, academic jobs don't open up, so, you know, okay, you know, we'll come down. So he was in Fort Lauderdale at the time, and so Helen and I, with Mike, because we only had one child at the time, we, you know, we bought a brand new Chevrolet, stripped down. I mean, it had nothing. I guess it had a radio, maybe, but no air conditioning, no nothing. And we got a bumper hitch on it, and put everything we had in a little bitty tiny trailer, and the 3 of us got in the car and we drove down to Florida and went to work for him. And I got my commodities broker's license. I was only there, we got down there towards the end of November, okay? And at Christmas, we didn't have a lot of money, but I flew into New Orleans for Christmas to visit my family and also to come up here to the university. I came up here to the university and I talked to some people about a job. I had offers to go interview at universities all over the country, and I always said, nope, there's only one university I want to teach.
Is that right?
Only one place I want to go, it's Loyola. And people ask me, I said, well, why not? That's where I went. Look at what they did for me. Why would I want to go anywhere else? I didn't want to go anywhere else. I didn't interview anywhere else. So anyway, I went, you know, and they didn't have any openings, you know. But while I was here, I saw G. Ralph Smith and some of the old faculty that I knew from when I was an undergraduate, and I went to see Father Carter too. I knew him. You know, he had been the moderator of my fraternity too, so I paid a social call on him, even though he was president. You know, and we talked, and he knew I was in the market. So I went back to Florida, and then somebody resigned or something on the faculty, an economist. And I got a call saying, are you still interested? We're interviewing. And I said, sure. And he said, well, come on in for an interview. And I came in for an interview, and I went back. And in the meantime, I had given up on that commodity stuff. I mean, I understood it. You know, I mean, an economist, you understand that stuff. But I just didn't like what I was doing. And I got a call from Michigan State saying, hey, we need somebody to teach in the spring and the summer, because they want a term system. So I said, done, you know, what do you pay me? And it was enough. I said, that's it, I'm coming. So we packed up again, Helen and Mike and I, and off we went. Mike's 3 years old at the time or something, 2.5, 3, I guess. And no, yeah, he's 3, anyway. So we drove up to Michigan, and I did that. And in the meantime, while I'm up there, I get a call from Loyola saying, "Are you interested in the job? We make you an offer." And I said, "What are you going to pay me?" And they quoted me a figure, and that was fine with me. It was enough to get. I said, "Done deal." And I said, "The only problem is that Loyola was starting like a couple of days before Labor, whatever it was. I had a commitment to Michigan State to finish the summer term, and there was a few days conflict, you know." And I said, "Look, I mean, I got a contract with them, you know." I said, "You all taught me ethics. I can't, just tell them goodbye. I gotta, I said, so if it's okay with you, if I come a few days late for the beginning of the semester," I said, "We got a deal." And they said, "Deal." So they sent me a contract, signed it. And when my time was up in Michigan, we drove down here.
What year was this?
That was the fall of '74. I started in the fall of '74. So this is my
24th year? 34th?
This is starting my 35th.
35th year.
35th year.
As a professor.
As a faculty member here.
Anybody else have more seniority than that?
You mean on campus? Oh,
Yeah.
Sure. They got a few people in A&S, I'm sure. And in the business school, Ron Krishna came the same year I did, and he's the only one who has been here as long as I have.
How have you seen the business school change?
Oh, the business school has really, really, really changed. When I first was in the business school, they had a lot of part-time faculty. I say a lot, a number of part-time faculty, not so many full-time. They had a core of full-time faculty and not so many part-timers. And truthfully, I mean, if you were to go look at it, what they had done was for example, in accounting, they had gotten practitioners who were really good and came in, but who had a practice down in town, and they would come in and teach and hold their office hours and all that. But by doing that, Loyola could keep the tuition bill down. I mean, he kept the tuition bill down by keeping the salary bill down. And I'm thinking in particular, for example, at that time, of Wally Leftwich, God rest his soul. He's a great guy who taught me accounting. And I mean, I learned so much accounting from that man. It was unbelievable. But like I say, he had a business down there. You see, so that. And as the school, I guess under pressure from our accrediting agency, the AACSB and whatever, as it became, quote, more professional, and it did, then, the part-time, it's not to say we don't use an occasional part-timer, but using part-time as really just as a fully integral part, that has gone way down, and now you have a full-time faculty member. When I was there wasn't a single accountant who had a PhD in accounting. Mm-hmm. They all had MBAs and CPAs. They were CPAs, and then they knew what they were doing. And like I said, they were fine teachers. But we got away from that and we got to a PhD. Now those guys, a couple of them, Wally and Alan Boudreau, were around for years and years and years after I got back, which was great, because they did the job. But now we've got the professional model, which means you got to have the people with the PhDs who are publishing papers. I don't know that those guys ever published anything, but they could teach. Mm-hmm. You say, but you wouldn't be accredited today with that, which is, in my opinion, a damn shame, but that's the way it is. And we had other people. Guy taught me marketing, had a marketing research firm down in town, and taught and things like that. Well, now we still use a few part-timers for, like, we've got a guy named Marwan Kabani who is terrific. He teaches a course in imports and exports. That's what he does for a living. You bring a guy like that in, I don't know what his degrees are, but he knows what he's doing. He's a practitioner. He can come in and he can really give the students a really fine course, in that area, which is great. And I think that's wonderful that we can still do that, if they let us. But now all of our accountants, save one, have a PhD, and well, I guess all the when I was there, one of the economists didn't have a PhD. Now we all have PhDs. With the guy who taught finance, the finance field has changed probably more than anything there. The guy who taught finance was an insurance salesman who came in and taught. And didn't, didn't know a lot of modern finance theory. Now we have all professionals in there, that kind of thing. So it's changed. It's become much more professional in keeping with how universities in general, I guess, have changed.
Well, let me ask you something about your chosen field. What is it that causes you to be so passionate about economics? What is it that you fell in love with?
I don't know.
The logic of it?
It's logical, John, but there's, why does Charlie fall in love with Mary and Mary fall in love with Charlie? I don't know.
Well, they all have their reasons.
I wonder how many of them could articulate it. It's just the subject matter to me is so terribly, terribly, terribly important. If we get the economics wrong, then, millions, billions of people go hungry when we get the economics wrong. When we get the economics right, then we can, improve living standards for people all over the world, I think that's pretty important.
Yeah.
But also, it also goes partly back to my philosophical background, which, is that, and again, we didn't teach you that, boy. You didn't learn your lessons well here at Loyola when you were a student. But, I'm basically a libertarian. I believe in human liberty. I think that that's the highest value on earth, not in the next life, or not in the spiritual dimension, but yeah, I guess it is. But liberty, But why? Because free will is so important, to impose your will on another human being. What gives you the right to impose your will on another human being, you say? And so and I believe that if you don't, have free will, there's no moral merit in anything you do. If you're forced to do good, and you're forced against your will to do, quote, good, what moral merit is there in it, So I believe in liberty, and that fits right in with, economics. Because economics is about what individual human beings do, not so much in a Robinson Crusoe situation, although we study that, but in a social situation, because man is a social animal. And the way we get ahead in life, and by get ahead, improve our standards of living and all that, is through social cooperation, not coercion. It doesn't work. We've seen the Soviet Union and all that kind of stuff, and it doesn't work. You need social cooperation. But to understand why social cooperation works, well, you study economics, and it explains it. It helps you understand it.
Well, you have been awarded a couple of teaching medals in the College of Business. Obviously, you have a technique that is admired. What is it about your pedagogy, or what advice would you give to a young teacher who's concerned about their pedagogy?
Well, I was thinking some way this kind of subject came up the other day about this when we were talking, and I said, it's one of those few things. If you want to go be an accountant, I know, it came up in connection with a student. And I was talking to another professor about a particular student, and this other professor said, well, I think that student's concerned that when the student goes out, leaves Loyola and goes out and works for a firm, in this case it would be an accounting firm, that they're going to expect that student to know all accounting and all that. And both professor and I know that's not true. First thing they're going to do is show you, well, look, the men's room's over there, and the ladies' room's over there, and the coffee room's over there. You got to learn. And they don't expect you. They expect you to get, training. They're going to train you, right? In so many jobs. You don't take a young accountant or a lawyer to say, okay, go solve this or do that or whatever. You got to train them. In our profession, academia, they train you and educate you in your field of specialty. But really, there's very little training if you're going to be a professor, as opposed to go, on Wall Street or something. But there's very little training if you're going to be a professor. Well, how do you teach? So, in effect, it's like that old joke about, no, joke, I should, but, how do you teach the kid to swim? Shove him off the end of the dock, and, sink or swim. Well, that's what happens. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about teaching in the sense of what you, styles or anything like that. I do know that I've had a few students over the years, a number of them tell me that if a professor is bored with what he's doing or is not particularly interested in the subject, the students, hey, if this guy is teaching it and he's not interested in it or whatever, why should we be? And I've had them tell me that, you know, I'm enthusiastic and passionate about what I'm doing. And I guess if there's anything, I mean, I would say know as much as you can about your field, be as enthusiastic and passionate about it as you can so that you can try and communicate with the students as best you can, and by God, admit that you don't know it all. And so if you make a mistake, just say, geez, I made a mistake, I'm sorry, you know, I'm not that smart, you know, which is true, you know, none of us are. You know, if a student asks a question you don't know an answer, you know, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to it. I'll see if I can find one or something like that. But I mean, just admit that you don't know it all. You know, and I think that alone gives you, as they would say, street cred, right? You know, I mean, hey, you know, this guy's not pretending to know everything. You know, he seems to know his own limitations. You know, and yet he loves the stuff. He's enthusiastic about it, and you know, he wants to communicate to us. So and look, all a teacher can do, and I tell my students, because every now and then, even at Loyola, you get one of those students who's sitting there and you can look at them and you know their attitude. See if you can make me learn anything in this class. I don't know if you've ever had any, but I've had it. And when I say, okay, look, let me explain to y'all. I can't make anybody in here learn anything. If you want to learn, then I can assist you. You know, I can help you learn if you want to learn. And then the only other thing I may be able to do, if you're really good, and I don't think, you know, I don't put myself in this category, but I've had a few teachers like this who can inspire some students who didn't want to learn so that they do want to learn. See? So, I mean, what can a teacher do? If they're really great, they can inspire students so they want to learn. But even if they just run-of-the-mill teachers, they can assist the student to learn who wants to learn. But if they don't want to learn, there's nothing you can do about it. No. Absolutely nothing. In no sense in worrying about it or wasting your time. I mean, you try and motivate them, but you know, if you can't, you can't.
Have you seen changes in students that maybe reflect the changes in society? Are they the same? Are students? Or are they?
They're quite changed, of course.
What's the difference between now and say some of the times that you were here as a student? Other than the dress code.
Yeah.
We have a different dress code now.
Yeah, but forget the dress code. That if anything, is just a symptom or a manifestation or something. Whether for good or ill, and I suspect for ill, society has changed, the culture has changed, and they reflect it, okay? In ways, I mean, and it's not to say that all changes in the culture have been bad or anything, but there certainly have been some. And the students just reflect the culture around them like the students in my era did. And that's a very, very different culture. I mean, I would say what I consider, and I'm not a Luddite, okay? So, I mean, we got cameras going right here, you know, that's fun. And, you know, I'm not opposed to television or CD players, any of that, you know, what do you call cell phones and all that kind of stuff. Although I won't, but anyway, that's just a quirk on my part. I really believe that television, because parents have used television as, and certainly not all parents, but a lot of parents have used television as a babysitter and have not wanted to be disciplinarians with respect to their children when needed. Children have watched too much television. And if you look at television enough, it destroys your ability to concentrate, because it changing images like that in a split second. You know, they do all that kind of stuff. Even when they have a commercial now, it used to be that I guess they would have 2-minute commercials, then it was 1 minute, then 30 seconds. Right now it's what, probably 10 seconds a piece for some of them, right? They get down to 5 seconds. And the images are flashing and all that. And you can't focus on it and concentrate and you know, so what you're doing is you're getting an image, but there's no thought involved, no in-depth of it. And I guess they don't want that. You know, they're trying to get you emotionally involved by this product or by that product rather than really let's think about this. Is this, you know, is this something you should really want, and why, in what way would this make your life better off or not? You know, it's just, no, we just want you to buy, you know. And so I find that the students are every bit, in terms of just raw brain power, you know, natural intelligence, every bit as bright as the kids I went to school with, you know, every bit as bright.
And their education?
But I find that they don't read nearly as much as my generation did. And again, I'm saying they as if it's all of them, and I certainly don't mean that, but I'm talking about in general. They don't read as much as my generation did. And frankly, they come to college with not as developed an academic background and not as deep a base of knowledge as my generation did, because and generations before me would say the same thing about my generation. We have been debasing education in this country for God only knows how many decades, maybe over a century. And so that their background knowledge, for example, of history and geography and literature. I mean, you go to use common expressions and that are expressions that were common in my day, and they don't know what they mean. And you know, 1 or 2 students will, but the most of them are just not. So I don't think. I think although they have the brain power at least as much as my generation had, I don't think they are as well prepared for college, and it makes, you know, college work more difficult for them. You know, I mean, that's the way I see it. Now, they go, that old man, things were better in the old days. You know, like that. I don't mean it that way. A lot of things weren't better in the old days, you know, I mean, believe me. Just a lot of things are better today, but not everything. I mean, change is not always for the best. We know that. And so some change doesn't benefit us.
Well, what about when you were here, did you think about the legacy or the tradition of the place? Did that have any resonance for you? Does it now?
Not in those terms, okay? That's not the kind of person I am. I mean, you're talking to somebody, you know, my wife would start laughing if she were here. You know, you said that. That's just not my nature to think that way. But if you say, well, to me, well, what would your life have been like without Loyola? I'd say, well, you know, it'd been like cutting off my arms maybe or something, you know? And what does it mean to you? Well, like I said, you know, family, friends, and Loyola. I mean, that's it. Well, my profession, of course, economics, but that to me is an integral part of what I do at Loyola, obviously. So, you know, family, friends, Loyola.
Well, what is the Loyola-ness, though?
Well, the Loyola-ness is the community, I don't know how many people understand this, but we have, for example, the staff. And again, everything you say, and so I find the example, you know, there's the exception over there. But by and large, the staff we've had here over the years that I've worked with has just been unbelievably competent and nice people. And by and large, overwhelmingly, the faculty members I've had to work with have been extremely competent and nice people. And I mean, you know, and when I say staff, I'm not just talking about the professional staff, the deans, assistants, and all that, I'm certainly including them. I'm talking about the people who clean up the university. I mean, from everybody, just nice, decent people, competent people, doing their job, doing it in a friendly way, always looking to what's best for our students. That's why we're here, what's best for them. And then you look at the students and you say, look at them. You know, again, overwhelming vast majority of them, good, decent, nice kids, right, who trying to get an education. You know? Well, if you're immersed in that, you know, and I normally get here, you know, this morning I got here about 6:30. I normally get here sometime between 6 and 7 in the morning, right?
You're the first person in the building?
If I get here before about 6:15, I am. Most days I get here after 6:15, maybe 6:30, and so the ladies who clean up are there. But I'm normally the first faculty member in the building. Yeah. And then, you know, what time do I leave? I don't know, 4:30, 5:30, 6. It depends on what's going on that day. You know, like Tuesdays and Thursdays. This semester, Monday and Wednesday this semester, I have class till 4:45. By the time I get out of here, it's, you know, an hour later or something. You know, so I'm here 5 days a week.
Full day.
Full day, 5 days a week. Why? Because I love it. You know, now I was fortunate, you know, for a number of years. My children were here, you know, so they would stop by my office and, you know, all that. And my wife worked for about 5 years, splitting her time between the physics. She's, you know, as an administrative assistant, splitting her time between the physics department and the honors program, and then she moved down to the law school some years ago, and has been working down there as Larry Moore's assistant, you know, the associate dean's assistant. But then just a few months ago, she basically semi-retired. So she's just working Tuesdays and Thursdays, training, you know, the woman who's going to fully replace her. And so then she's going to be out of there. You know, she's going to retire, which is good. But I mean, you know, having your wife there, you know, having your kids there, having all the wonderful students here, having the faculty, having the staff. I mean, you know, what more do you want, John?
Well, it sounds like your whole family, I mean, Loyola is your family, literally.
Well, yeah, my brother-in-law went to school here and got his bachelor's degree in a business school and got a law degree here. My sister got her bachelor's degree here. My niece, their daughter, just finished a master's in nursing here. I have a cousin whose son went here in the business school, was at roughly the same time as my second son, and he got an accounting degree, and he's with the locals, with a national CPA firm working locally though. So yeah, sure, why not? You know, and my wife, I mean, besides my undergraduate degree, I have a law degree from here, and my wife got a master's degree from the Institute for Ministry.
Well, so
family business.
Well, when you talk to young students, maybe high school students who are thinking about coming here, obviously you think this is the place for them to come. What do you say to them?
I tell them it's a great place. I tell them as much as I can about the good things, but then I tell them something very, very seriously. And I say, look, what's important to you is to find a university where you feel at home. Because if you feel at home, if you're comfortable there, for the right reasons, obviously, then you will thrive and prosper there. And if you get in a place that you just don't feel that comfortable, I said, you're not going to thrive and prosper. I said, so I tell them, so if you feel that way about Loyola, if you come here and you experience that and you meet the faculty, you meet students and all that kind of stuff, and you really just get that good, warm feeling, that's the kind of place I want to be part of, I said, then join us. I said, but if you don't, and there's some other place you went that you feel that way, I said, go there, you'll be happier, you'll do better, go there. So, I mean, Loyola is not for everybody, and it's not in the sense of, well, you can't afford it, or not for everybody because we don't like you or something like that. It's just Loyola has a character and a personality, and it's just like, you meet a woman and she's not for everybody, she's for you. You know, she meets a bunch of men, but you're the one for it. It's the right one, it's the right match. And to me, it's, of that same ilk, it's the right match between you and the university. And if you got it, you're going to be. And I've had students come here who were really good students and nice kids who just told me, I'm just not happy here. And one lovely young lady who just got homesick and wanted to go back home, be closer to her family. And I understand. And so you have those kind of things, And yet I've had other students who've been other universities and transferred here and just, thank God they transferred here, that they were at the wrong place and now Loyola's the right place for them,
Right.
So, that's the way it is. But, another thing too, you talk about the students. I've got a student right now, a really, really nice kid. I say he's a kid. He's a young man. He's got a business. Never graduated. Okay, never graduated. Why not? Really, one graduation requirement left. Katrina hit. All the problems with Katrina, and then the type of business he's in, that created business for him. He's a real go-getter entrepreneur type, No, not calling, Hey, you got this, let's talk. Come on in, let's talk. He comes in, talks. Okay, look, let's go. This is what you need to do to graduate. Now, you're that close and you're going to what are you, Dumbo? You're going to let it go? And I just talked to him this week. And, all right, I'm working on it. I got just this one paper I think it's one paper he's got to finish. All right, well, you got to read. Well, you got to read a book. I said, I started. I said, how far along? He said, 10 pages. I said, 10 pages? I said, you take the weekend off, read the damn book, write the paper, and be done, He's going to get a degree. He's going to, And he deserves it. He should have it, He would have had it but for Katrina. See, and to me, that's part of what Loyola is, those kinds of things,
It's a caring.
Yeah. And I don't know, Jerry Dotrieve is gone now.
Right.
He and I together 29 years here.
Wow.
And he's gone. And he, is one of the most caring person. Another one who just, now Jerry left to be dean somewhere else, up at Roger Williams University up in Rhode Island. But Ms. Ataya, who was here, I don't know, was she 38 years, 39 years, whatever it was, and just retired at the end of last school year. You talk about tough love, boy, that wasn't there, but you talk about a woman that cared about the students and would do anything she could to help a student, anything that was not immoral and illegal. Well, I don't even know about the illegal part. But anything that wasn't immoral, she would do to help students. She cared about them that much, And so we lose people like that, but they you lose them. They retire, some die, some go off for whatever reason. But for some reason, Loyola seems to be able to attract others in their place who it will take time, because it takes years to get all the connections they have and all the experience and all that, but who have that same attitude. And so you can see that, hey, everything's going to be all right. The old folks like me can go away, and we've got young folks coming along and take our place. We, in the economics department, and some people would call this inbreeding, and to them I say, and what that is, we have, in the last couple of years, well, one about 3 years ago, one this year, no, 4 years. I guess this is John's 4th year. But we've now got 4 economists. We should have more. Everybody hear that? We need more, send money, But there are 4 of us, Walter and I. Well, I'm 68, Walter's 67, so, we getting up in age. But the 2 young guys we hired were John Levendis and now Dan D'Amico. Well, who's John Levendis? Well, John Levendis was an economics major here at Loyola that we taught, or at least I did. Walter wasn't here at the time, and who was an honors student. So now he's here, and he knows just like I did. He knows what Loyola is. And here comes Dan D'Amico. And who was Dan D'Amico? He was an economics major here, and he was an honors student. You say, he knows Loyola. They have that, So, to me, some people say, oh, that's inbreeding, all that. Hey, what do you mean inbreeding? Yeah, they learned economics at the undergraduate level from John from me and Deb, and who was here then, and Dan partly from me and partly more from Walter. But hey, they went off and got PhDs at different universities. Okay, so that's, so no inbreeding there in that sense. But they have a feel for Loyola that just bringing somebody in with the same academic credentials who has, as an undergraduate, gone to, well, let's pick a university, I don't know, University of Texas or something, just would not have.
Yeah, but it does.
And so as long, in my opinion, as long as we have openings in the economics department and we have people who are undergraduates at Loyola who are qualified, as qualified as anybody else in the pot, I want the Loyola person. I want that person. Because there's something special about this place. And I think those of our undergraduates, those who were, successful, very successful academic careers, gone and got PhDs now, and who want to come back, hey, that's what we want. You know?
Well, I've only been here for a few years, but it does seem to be an easy place to care about.
Oh, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
So you keep
but it's the people. And when you say the people, I mean, let's go back. It's a Jesuit university. It was started by the Jesuits. And it was infused with all of the qualities and characteristics of the Jesuits, and all those different things they talk about, but it really is true, caring for the whole person, all those kinds of things, discernment, whatever you want, all those different qualities. Nobody's walking around beating it like that, but it infuses the place, and it infuses it. I don't know how to put it. Just infuses it that way, but it's almost like osmosis or something. It's here. It permeates the place.
Do you think the diminished number of Jesuits who are associated with the university has caused a change, or does it still have the character?
Well, I guess there's some change. Yes, I guess that's inevitable, but. But
the character is formed.
But there is a certain quality here at this university that I think if all the Jesuits left, Adam Smith, I think it was, said there's a lot of ruin in a nation, and I think that the Jesuit nature of this place is so infused into it that if all the Jesuits left, it would take quite some time before that, was no longer an integral or important part of Loyola. If all the Jesuits, it would still, the people who were here would carry on in that tradition. Now, as new people came in and all that, I guess it would change over time. But I think it would last for a long time, John. I really, really do.
If you had a magic wand and could wave it and change one thing. And maybe one thing that you would want to remain the same, what would those things be? What would you want to change, and what would you want to make unalterable?
Well, I don't know. That's so hard, John. I mean, one of the first things I'd say is make the students study more history. Make them all study more history and take some economics, But that's easy to say. I don't really know, John. That's a really, really, really difficult question. And part of it is that, I don't have that much confidence in my own wisdom to be able to say that, boy, this is one thing that I want to make immutable, and this is something else I want to change right now. I just.
So you're content with it?
No. We're always trying to make changes, but it's to improve things. But that doesn't mean that you look at any one of them and say, my God, if we do this, that'll put us up in the clouds, or if we don't change this, that'll keep us up in the clouds or something. I mean, to me, we're all human. I mean, that's one of the things you certainly learn with your Jesuit education. We're all human. That means we're all frail. We all make mistakes and all the time and all that. So, and I'm conservative in a way that before I want to make any radical changes, I want to make sure that, I want to be really certain about, what's going on with radical changes. Now with minor changes, well then, that's a little different. You look at it and you listen to arguments on both sides and say, okay, we can, and I'm talking about in relatively short time, you can say, okay, yeah, maybe that's a change we ought to make. But to say what one thing about Loyola I would never want changed, or what one thing would I want changed right now?
Not a good question, huh?
Well, no, I wouldn't say it's not. I'm not saying that you didn't ask a good question. I'm saying that the person you asked couldn't give you a good answer. Okay.
That's a very generous thing to say. Let me ask you one other question. How did your law degree affect your love for economics, your focus on economics? Or did it do anything?
Well, you have to understand that before I went to get my PhD in economics, I had decided I was going to get a PhD in economics and a law degree, and the only question was which one I was going to get first. So at one time in New Orleans, there were three of us, that may be more or less now, but there were three of us who had PhDs in economics and law degrees, at least teaching at universities. There was a fellow whose son now teaches at our law school, a fine young man teaching at our law school named John Lovett, just a really super young man. And his father, Bill Lovett, was at Tulane Law School, may still be there. And interestingly enough, he had a PhD from Michigan State. He finished right before I started there, and he had a law degree. He got his law degree first, then got his PhD. There was a guy named Mel Wolfson, God rest his soul, who was out at UNO, who had gotten his PhD at Illinois, and I think his law degree was from Tulane, but he got his PhD first and then his law degree. And it was interesting to note that the two guys who got their PhDs in economics first worked in business schools, and the guy who got his law degree first worked in a law school. And I always maintained, at least in my case, that what I did, I went for my true love first, and then went for law school afterwards. But I've never regretted going to law school. I wanted to learn more about the law. I was fortunate to be able to do that. It's given me, a way of looking at things that I wouldn't have had if I didn't go to law school. It's helped me some in my teaching of economics, because for example, law and economics is a field in economics now, just like macro and micro and all that. And I've, taught law and economics. And then it also helped me with my when I had kids in high school and in grammar school, tuition bills got pretty steep, and so I did a little consulting then, and it helped me with my consulting, and so that was nice too. But the main reason I did it was for intellectual reasons. I just wanted to know more about the law. I said, in America in this day and age, and now we're talking about a quarter of a century and more ago, but the law was so all pervasive that it was almost like you had to know something about law. I'm joking now, in self-defense. Well,
yeah.
Quasi-joking, but I mean, you want to understand. I mean, because the courts had so much influence on what was going on. So, what does this all mean? Why are they doing it?
Well, you seem to have a great curiosity. Did that come from your parents?
Well, my father was dead before I was 3.
Is that right?
My mother read. Okay, every night my mother would sit in her chair and she would have a book, and she would smoke her 4 cigarettes. Okay, every night she would smoke 4 cigarettes, except during Lent, when she gave up her 4 cigarettes and only smoked the 4 cigarettes on Sunday night. She would sit in that chair and read, and we had books around us all the time, and I was taught to read at a very, very early age, and I just loved to read, and I often say one of the things that's going to happen if you get to heaven is God is going to let you understand, and I've always, I really do, I want to understand.
Yeah.
And so I guess if you want to call that curiosity or whatever, that's fine. It's probably a good term for it. But I really do want to understand. I mean, I see things and I want to know why. Why is this? Why is that happen?
Well, in your personal work, you've
So much so that I have to tell a joke myself. Yeah, I got a big mouth and always talking and all that. And, about, I guess it's probably back in the late 80s, I don't remember the exact date, Carl Brandt and I guess Ransom Marlowe, I don't know, who's a Jesuit, Carl was. Anyway, they put on a thing in the summer, this big physics symposium, okay? And they had, as I recall, I think 2 Nobel Prize winners there, okay? A little bit of Loyola, but Carl Brandt is world famous for the Branch-Dickey theory and all that, And, I was an undergraduate physics major. I failed at it, but as undergraduate. And I've always retained an interest in it, and all that, but, what do I know? So when I heard about it, we have all these physicists from all over, and I said, Carl, can I come, to your symposium? He said, Bill, you can come. He said, you sit in the back. He said, you sit in the back. He said, and you don't open your mouth. He said, you don't say one word, not one word, you don't raise your hand, in a question, you just sit back there and you can listen. He said, if you do that, you can come, And I did, I went, and, I didn't open my mouth, and I would say that 99.9% of it went right over my head, but every now and then, somebody would say something that, I guess quasi understood, but it was a wonderful experience being there, listening to these guys and all that. So, I had a great time, even though I wasn't allowed to talk, which was very frustrating. Well, I wouldn't have been taught, but ask questions, which was very, very frustrating for me, but that's okay.
well,
Yeah, Carl did the right thing. He knows that, and I know that.
well, what's on the horizon for you? I mean, are you studying now? What are you particularly interested in? Is there something undone that you want to do?
Yeah, there's something undone. Well, right now, of course, this is, of all the times to be a macroeconomist, it reminds me of Dickens' Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, It was the worst of times. The economy, today is October the 14th or something, 2008. So the economy is in the worst shape. Well, let me do this way. The financial aspects of the economy in the worst shape they've been in since the Great Depression. The non-financial, what we call the real aspects, we're in a recession, it's getting worse, it's going to get worse. I think it's going to be the worst recession since the Great Depression. We may be heading into a depression, or even a greater depression. So in that sense, it's the worst of times, at least during my lifetime. On the other hand, from the point of view of my specialty in economics, which is macroeconomics, of all the times in the world to be a macroeconomist, this is it. This is what it's about, you see. So that's, I couldn't ask for anything better. And sometimes God really just smiles at you. Last spring, I knew I would be teaching international economics this fall and the Austrian economics course, which we call the market process this fall. Austrian economics is not about Austria. It's a school of thought, right. Like, Jungian psychology or something like that. But I was going to have an elective, and I thought, and I had seen some signs that the economy wasn't doing great and all, but I don't know, serendipity, God's grace, whatever. I said, look, why don't I teach a course, topics in current issues in current issues or current topics, current issues, I guess, in macroeconomics. And my colleagues looked around and said, hey, that sounds great. Why don't you go ahead and do that? And I said, the only thing no books for the students or anything. All they're going to have to do is subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, and what we're going to do in class every day is go in and talk about stuff that's in the Wall Street Journal or what's going on. It's like hitting a Grand Slam home run to win the World Series or something. It was just the luckiest thing I ever did in my life. And I'm having as much fun as I've enjoyed teaching courses, and I love to teach. I've never taught a course that I've enjoyed more than this one. And luckily we got a ways to go. So best of times, worst of times. The one thing that I have not yet done that I really want to do is I want to write, I don't know whether it'll end up being a monograph or a book on macroeconomics. obviously from the Austrian economics perspective, but I want to write a book on that. Now, I remember when I was a graduate student, they had this, senior faculty member in the economics department at Michigan State, and he was the big guru, and when the president of the university left, he became acting president, and all that. He was, had big worships on campus and all that kind of stuff. And we were sitting around the economics coffee room, or whatever you want to call it, and we were sitting around there, a bunch of us, and he said something about writing, and I remember him saying something, well, what have you written, or what are you going to write? And I said, I don't know. I don't have anything to say, so I'm not going to write, And he said, well, Mr. Barnett, that's a cop-out, or something, it's just an excuse because you don't want to do research and write. And so I'm not going to argue with him, But I really meant it. At that time, I hadn't even completed my degree. I didn't have anything to say to anybody about anything in economics. But now that I've been studying, I started my first economics class here in the fall of '65, so that's 43 years later. Now I do have something that I want to say. So now I am going to write it, but it's very difficult, but I'm going to get it done. And that's,
well, we look forward to that.
And then and then the rest of it is, like I say, they take me out of here feet first. I'm having too much fun. Why would I leave?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they say that wisdom comes with understanding and time. Is there something you could say to us?
No, because I'm not a wise person.
Yes,
you
are.
No. Look, if you ask me, am I knowledgeable about macroeconomics? I'll tell you, you damn right I am, John. But if you ask me about wisdom,
about life,
no. The only thing I got to say about that is, look, God's given you certain talents, and you better damn well use them, And I don't care who you are, you've gotten some talents. And then the other thing is, marry the right woman, and have children and have a wonderful family life. It's great. And then be fortunate like me and get a wonderful job that you can stay with all your life and be happy. And it beats all the rest of it to death. I don't know if that's wisdom or that's just, what's wise about that? That's just common sense.
It sounds like contentment to me.
Well, it is, but it's common sense. It's nothing, and money will not make you happy. Although the absence of adequate amount of money will make you miserable. Once you, sure, if you don't know how you're going to put food on the table for your kiddies or something, you'll be miserable. But once you've got the essentials in life taken care of, you need another car and another boat and 50 suits instead of 2 or whatever you have. Who needs all that, As the Jesuits would say, impedimenta. And they're right.
Well, thanks for talking to us.
My pleasure,
Professor.
John. My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Hope you got something useful here, gang.
I think so. Thank you so much.